Page 18, Low C Boogie, Boogie Woogie. I assume the low C are these notes down here that they're talking about that you're playing a lot. This C and this C. About as low as it gets. I have a few things I'd like to point out here. There's some interesting things going on in the music and in music notation in general, and just make sure you understand what's happening here. See, the little details we can overlook, and we try not to. I overlook them. I'm not as accurate as I would like to think I am, but we try and get them. And I think as an instructor, it's my job to point them out, and then it's your job as a student to overlook them, I guess. I'm not sure how that works, but just whatever. I want to start out with the right hand. Starting on measure 4, when the right hand comes in, we have these triplets. 1 enda, 2 enda, 3 enda, 4 enda. Of course, the right hand doesn't come in until beat 3, so we'll forget 1 and 2 for now, and just 3 enda, 4 enda, and that's the triplets. Of course, the first one is a rest, so you're going to rest on that. 3 enda, 4 enda, 3 enda, 4 enda, 3 enda. And it would help if you put in a natural accent. Every beat can have a natural accent if it's split up like this, because we have multiple notes in one beat, so if you give it that natural accent, you can feel that triplet bump, 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 bump. You feel it, you don't do it, because if you'll feel it, you'll do it. That made no sense at all, but that's music for you. That pattern is all over the place, and on measure 5, they put a natural sign in parentheses. They're just being polite to you because it is an E natural. By the rules, it's an E natural because the accidentals in the previous measure don't apply anymore once you cross that bar line. So that E flat in measure 4 doesn't apply to measure 5, but they're just reminding you this is a natural. Take a look at, speaking about these rules, take a look at measure 10. Interesting thing going on here. You have an A and E flat for a half note, first 2 counts. The E flat, remember that? Because when the triplets come in, you have another E flat, they put another flat sign in front of it. That's not necessary, because the flat sign from the E flat at the beginning of the measure applies for the whole measure. So putting in a flat sign there is unnecessary. If anything, they should have put parentheses around it. But I would have just left the flat sign off, and it's up to you to know the rules to play it flat because it's already had a flat in that measure. So just want to point that out. But in the next measure, that is an E natural, because when you cross the bar line, the accidental doesn't apply anymore. It's an important point to that rule. Now, on the last measure of the page, on page 18, I would finger those first 2 G's 2-1 rather than 1-1. The first one is like a pickup to the last beat. The counting for the last 2 beats in that measure is a 3 and 4 and. It doesn't look like it, but it is. It's a triplet, so it's the first 2 of the triplet are rests. That's the quarter rest. 3 and then the 8th note triplet comes in on the 3 and 4 and so it's a 4 and it's like a pickup note to the last beat. So the measure 13, that grace note, very quickly, I do it on the beat, you can do it before the beat, I don't know how you're going to do it, you do it. And the rhythm on measure 13, because of the tie can throw people, so I'm going to take the tie out and just play the notes without the grace note. It's this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so that's really what it is. But then when you tie in the middle of the measure there, those together, that's different. 1. So you'll get it. Really, I got faith in you, you'll get it. Measure 14. Look at this carefully. We have on beat 2, 2 and watch the fingering. And then for the last beat, you got to cross way over to get the 3rd finger on that. This distance feels weird and a bit awkward, but if you're going to do much piano playing, you got to be able to do this one, because this will happen. That reaching across like that, that'll happen. Third finger, not second, because you need the second finger for the D. Like so. Now when you're working these things out, you're trying to get the notes in the fingering, I typically will leave out the rhythm. Just forget the rhythm, like on measure 14, and I will just try and get these notes. Got to stretch over here, and then cross over here. And once I get the notes, then I can go back and add the rhythm. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. That's how I do it. And that's how I'd recommend you try that too. Measure 17 and 18. 17 is find your... That first note at the end of the first beat is like a pickup to the second beat. So it's 1 and 2 and 3, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now on the next measure, that E is an E natural. Because you cross the bar line, the flat doesn't count. Now, there's a couple ways of fingering measure 18. You can finger it the way they're saying. But this is a chord. And I get back to that. I typically finger broken chord, like a broken chord. I finger them the way I would finger the chord. And if I finger this chord, I'm going to finger it 5, 4, 2, 1. Not 5, 3. So when I play this, I finger it 5. Measure 19. We've got the same rhythm. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now that last note, they're saying 3-1. That's playing with the third finger and then substitute. I don't see why that's necessary. I would just play it with the thumb to begin with. Just here. And you're there. You don't need to do a finger substitution. Measure 21, same thing. But measure 22, that's an E natural. And I would do it 5, 4, 2, 1. We've already had this chord earlier. We're headed down here. And then measure 23 is a 1, 2, 4. And then a 1, 2, 4 again. And at the end of it. On page 20, on measure 32, the fingering at the end for those eighth notes, I would do a 2-1 for the first 2 eighth notes. We've already had this earlier in the piece. I just do it. It's just, to me, I can feel the rhythm better when I play the thumb on a beat, if I can. So rather than using thumb twice, I like to use some other finger first. To me, that is easier because I'm used to it. If you're not used to it, it's not easier. But I would encourage you to get used to it because it really comes in handy. And that's about it for the right hand. Let's look at the left hand. At the beginning, on page 18, this rhythm. The notes are written here. Let's get the notes first. All right, forget the rhythm. Just get the notes. You're here. Look at the fingering. That's a good fingering. And then a thumb on the second C. Move around. Now you have staccato there. And then once you kind of get the notes, you can start adding in the rhythm. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Like so. And that rhythm is everywhere. You got it here, you got it. Now the kicker is that it has an 8/8 under it. So rather than here, where it's written, you're going to play it down here. Now, that causes another problem. I'll bring it out. It's inherent in the instrument. Depending on your instrument, the different brands, it's different, so you have to experiment. When you get down in here, it can get really muddy and really heavy very quickly. We don't want this to be heavy. So you have to be very careful. It's marked with an MP. I think you could probably come down to a P, even softer, because you have to adjust because you're in this range. You wouldn't play it the same up here, as you'd play it down here. You have to adjust for the sound. Listen very carefully and keep this on the light side. And it's hard to do when you're down here because the notes get muddy. Your staccatos have to be very short down here because the piano won't let them be short. Even after you play it, it still sounds. The note doesn't stop like it does up here. So lightly and very short staccatos. And put a little emphasis on each beat. We want to hear the beat. 1, 2, 3. And that is all over the place. You just got to keep that left hand really soft and light when you're down in this part of the chord. Now when you come up a little bit over at top of page 19, you're up here. That's not so bad. And on the second line on page 19 there, measure 17, you're here. I'd still keep those very short staccatos. And while I'm here, the fingering for this pattern is I would use 5-2 on the beats 1 and 3 on each measure that you have this pattern. Now, it has to be really soft because the overall volume here is medium soft, and that applies to the melody, which is the right hand. So the left hand has to be really soft, but keep those really light. Very short until you get down to the bottom of the page. On measure, it starts at measure 21 when you can get a little bit louder, and then on measure 23 you know each one is accented. Kind of reinforces the fortissimo, the loud. You don't need an accented loud. If you play it loud, it'll sound accented. It's just the way the piano works. I want to talk a little bit about dynamics. I've already mentioned a few things, but again, the melody's in the right hand. That's what we want to hear. Starting at measure 4, you're down here. You get the idea. I'm hoping that the melody comes out and that low note's got to be light. Toward the bottom of page 19, you're getting a little louder, getting a little more excited. And it's kind of important here. Let's start, say, around measure 19. Here you're still kind of soft. A little louder. All of a sudden it's soft. You're like you were at the beginning, and it's just a real sudden change. And if you can do that, it's very effective. At the bottom of the page on page 20, we'll talk about this a little bit. Well, let's go back to measure 32, where you're ending a phrase. And now you're kind of start this down a little bit. Get louder. Here on measure 34 you're loud, and then on measure 35 you'll start loud on the first beat and immediately start getting soft and slowing down. Listen to the right hand. That dies away on its own, so just kind of follow that in the left hand. Pedal at the end. the end, the last two measures. You're here. At this point, the typical rhythm and the beat pretty much goes away, because you've slowed down from measure 35. That pretty much ends the beat. Now you're just kind of putting a tag on the end. I wouldn't worry so much about counting them. You're just playing them really, really slow. And then when you get around to it and you feel like it and you're tired of sitting here like that, lift the pedal as you play the last note, because it's staccato. And it's soft. You've dialed away, you're getting soft here. It's very effective. Let's try this together slowly and see if we can get the rhythms and the notes pretty much in there. I'm going to give us 4 counts. This is 4/4 time, and we're going to play it very, very slowly. So the right hand is here. I'm not going to show them. I'm not going to show the pedal because it's only used at the end, and hopefully you can get that. It's not that hard. But left hand's here. You can leave your right hand down if you want. Just make sure before you play on measure 4, before the right hand comes in, I'll get there, give me a chance. Get your right hand up here where it belongs. Go ahead and put your foot on the pedal though, because you're going to need it eventually. Now we're going to do pages 18 and 19, then we're going to stop. I'm going to count us in again, we're going to do page 20. If you're playing this for somebody you don't have it memorized, you can't do that, because you can't mess up the beat. So you got to get in a page turn. Well, there's a couple ways you can do it here. On measure 23, the right hand has that staccato and nothing left. So if you just memorize the last measure, then you can go ahead and turn the page out and play that staccato. And you've got 3 beats in there to get the page turned, and then you can go ahead and finish the last do the last measure on page 19, but the page is turned and you're ready to go on. That's one way of doing it. So that's what I recommend, because otherwise you have to leave out notes, and we don't want to leave out notes if we can help it, so I would recommend you do that. Preferably you just memorize the whole thing though. It's pretty repetitious. So you're thinking, but it's 3 pages, it can't memorize 3 pages. Well, not really, because you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over so much, it's probably only about half that long really of what you have to memorize. You just have to memorize how to put it all together. 1, 2, ready, and go, and turn the page, hands go here, foot's on the pedal, here we go. 1, 2, 3, and go, and I don't know if there's recordings of this. I would think that somebody would have recorded this by now just for fun. If they haven't, why don't you do it? Just work it up and do it. But give you an idea what I think it might sound like is like this.